a PowerPoint. All right. So before we get into this, I do want you all to know that the 6 stages of caregiving is kind of a general thing. Not everybody is going to experience every stage. And some of you have probably already flown through the first couple of stages and you're kind of in, 3 or 4 in your caregiving journey. And that's okay. The goal here isn't to make anyone feel like, well, this is exactly how things are going to be. And I need, it's just kind of a way to kind of get you thinking about maybe the stage that you're currently in and maybe some tricks and tips to prepare for the stages to come. We do go through the caregiving journey all the way up through the end. And so the end of caregiving might look different for everybody. The end of caregiving may be, the loss of your loved one. It might be when they transition into maybe a full-time care facility. Of course, even in those situations, your caregiving journey isn't completely over, but the brunt of it all being on your shoulders is typically alleviated. Some of you caregiving for children, you very well might have children that outlive you. So your end of caregiving is going to look a little different than everybody else's. So just keep those in mind as we go through these stages. You're not going to experience every single thing on these, but it might be enough to kind of get you thinking about preparation for the next stage, maybe validation for the stage you're currently in. I don't know if you have noticed that, but for me, validating my feelings goes a long way in giving me strength to continue my tasks. So I hope that you feel a little validation through this. I hope you feel seen in here. And I hope that you understand that this is a growing community. Caregiving and family caregivers, there's millions of you all across the country. And so you're never alone in these stages. You're never alone in how you feel. Even if it might feel that way sometimes, there's more of you out there than you might think. So let's go ahead and get into it. First of all, the 6 stages of caregiving is a concept developed by Denise Brown. She wrote a book called The Caregiving Years, Your Guide to Navigate the 6 Caregiving Stages. So she worked very closely with caregivers for several years, and she noticed that there's kind of a growing theme, right? A lot of people were asking, why me, why now, and what now? So she developed the stages to answer those questions and to help caregivers find direction and purpose as they travel this particularly difficult part of life. So the format of this is going to be, I'll give you the stage and the profile of the person in that stage, priorities of that stage, and action steps you can take to prepare and get through that stage. So the first one is the expectant caregiver. Most of you probably have already gone through this stage and passed it, several stages. This is the first stage of caregiving, and we're all expectant caregivers. You've probably heard that quote by, oh gosh, I can't remember her name now, but she said that everyone is either about to be a caregiver, they are a caregiver, or they're going to need caregiving sometime in their life. So some people maybe didn't expect to be caregivers, right? Maybe it just kind of landed in your lap, and so you didn't really have time to prepare. Some of you may be right on this journey thinking, maybe mom needs a little more help than she used to, or maybe, my spouse isn't as sharp and mentally as they used to be, so maybe there's something going on. So some of you may be in this stage, but again, some of you probably already passed through it. And caregiving might be, expectant caregiving might be when you end one caregiving journey and you become an expectant caregiver for another. So, maybe you've already taken care of, your mom or your dad, and now you're having to care for your spouse. So you're thinking maybe that's another chapter that's about to open in your caregiving journey. And so some of the priorities of the expectant caregiver is to spend a lot of time with your potential care recipient. Talk about their wishes, their worries, their concerns. In order for us to become powerful and authoritative advocates for our loved ones, gathering information about them and getting to know them as a person is really going to help. So think of these questions. What do they like? What don't they like? Do they have any hobbies? What do they hold most dear to them? How do they live their life? What does a typical day, week, or month look like to them? And what makes them feel safe and confident? So the theme here is kind of, we're going to include our loved one in the care preparation. I'm sure some of you have probably realized very quickly that caregiving isn't about just uprooting one person from their life and putting them conveniently into yours. There's going to be a collaboration there. It's going to have to be, what changes can I make in my routine to accommodate them, and vice versa. So this is a stage where you kind of start thinking of those things. You're also going to be making plans and decisions together with your future care recipient. Where are they going to live? Very importantly, what are your boundaries? And when will you know to ask for help? How will everything be financed? Who will be involved? A lot of times you hear caregivers say, well, I'm the only one. My siblings aren't helping. My family isn't helping. And so the expectant caregiver has the opportunity to really create those expectations within the family unit of whose responsibility is what and how can each person contribute. So it is vitally important in the stage that you realize and are mindful of the decisions that you make, because they will impact your future as a caregiver. Let's see. So some action steps you can take. These are, again, you're not going to take all of these steps, I'm sure, but these are some things that might be potentially helpful in the very beginning stages. Familiarize with the legalities of caregiving and caregiving issues. You know, what are my legal responsibilities to mom and dad? You know, what financial responsibilities am I going to have to take on because of this legally? Determining your financial situations. Can you afford long-term assisted care? Can you afford to have them come into your home? Is it more convenient for you to just, you know, give them a space close to you, maybe in a different apartment or something like that? Researching local agencies and facilities, getting to know healthcare providers, and familiarize yourself with treatment plans. You know, is your loved one going to need dialysis, and how often? Are they going to need chemotherapy? If they have Alzheimer's or dementia, what are the things that you can prepare for now for their care, so that way it's not a surprise to you later? Understanding your loved one's routines and thinking about how you might integrate them into your own. Like I said before, it's not just about plucking them out of their lives and dropping them into yours. How do you merge the two? And being realistic about your loved one's needs. I'm doing another education for caregiving with difficult adults, difficult parents. And sometimes, you know, what they say they need isn't really what they need. They just are trying to control what's going on in your life. And so being realistic about what they actually need and what they don't need. And then also too, you know, not denying the level of care that they're going to require as the journey progresses. Journaling, starting to journal and document your feelings, your concerns, your actions, and your results. A lot of times when we say, well, you should journal, you should journal, you should journal, people don't realize the value of that. But really, journaling is just a space for you to kind of brain dump. So it's not all kind of collecting in your brains there and causing you stress. And so starting your journey with that self-care, with that journaling, is going to serve you well as you continue through. Looking at your own life and start making plans for integrating caregiving. How are you going to make space for the time it's going to take? And progressively, it might take more time from your daily life. And so being prepared on how you're going to make those cuts in your schedule will serve you a lot going forward. Make yourself a priority and work toward becoming your best self now. That means physically, emotionally, and financially. And your caregiving plan, include your own health and well-being in every care plan, because the healthier you are, the better for your loved one. Okay, we don't want to get to the point where at the bottom of our barrel of our patients, we're experiencing compassion fatigue, which is an actual thing, before we reach out and start making positive changes in our lives. We want to start those patterns now. And remember that simplicity is best. Caregiving is complicated in more ways than one. And so we always want to seek simple solutions, not perfect solutions, because I don't think there are any. We're looking for simple solutions to make things easier. All right. The next stage is the freshman caregiver. So you become a freshman caregiver when you begin helping your loved one on a regular basis. Your challenge will be trying to discover the solutions that work best for you both. And soon you'll discover how complicated your healthcare systems can be. Keep asking questions and never assume. Some of you who have flown past the freshman caregiver stage, you're like, yes, the healthcare systems are ridiculous, right? They're frustrating, they're inadequate in a lot of ways. And so if you're just starting this journey, just buckle up, because yeah, it can be very complicated. And in order to save your sanity, researching information, solutions, resources, all of that will help you because you'll know what's coming. And it's important to get comfortable with the process now. Learning to be vocal during this time will help. Never assume something and always voice your concerns, even if they seem completely obvious. Our healthcare professionals are not mind readers, and every case is different. So practicing voicing your concerns, practicing asking questions, that's going to serve you as you advocate for your loved one in the future. Don't wait for people to step up and let them know of your expectations. You know, if you have other family members who should be joining and carrying the responsibility with you, let them know that right out of the gate. Don't wait for people to become complacent, because then you're going to have to, you know, work even harder to get them into that routine that you're establishing. The longer you wait, the harder it'll be. So, and also during this time, you're trying to find available services to help you lighten the load, like Alabama Respite, professionals and other caregivers that you can rely on to answer your questions. You know, so joining support groups, coming into these educations like we are today, these are all going to help you realize that you're not alone and that there are resources to help. And also find support that offers you comfort and understanding and ways to enjoy your own hobbies and interests. That's what Alabama Respite is all about. It's all about serving the caregiver so that they can still be their own individual person. They can still have their hobbies. They can still be socializing and not confined to their role as a caregiver. So your priorities here, it says, congratulations, you officially stepped into the role of caregiver. During this time, you're going to want to do a lot of experimenting, determine what will work for you and your care recipient. So now it's time to test the waters, right? You might have a plan that looks great on paper, but then you go to practice it and, you know, mom's not having it, you know, or dad's not having it, or the health system made you stop in your tracks. Okay, so this is a time where, you know, maybe your care recipient doesn't need 24-hour around the clock care. So you have time to, you know, make mistakes and see what works and what doesn't work. So again, researching all aspects of your caregiver's life, their financial, legal, healthcare, community, and commit to becoming educated in the processes. Learn how the system works and stay informed about their changes. We know they're ever changing, sometimes for the good, sometimes not, but knowing what's going on in the caregiving world as far as, you know, legal rights and what's available to you. Knowledge is power in the situation. Do you have clear boundary lines that need to be established right away? You know, again, if you're caregiving for someone who, you know, they're of sound mind and they just physically can't do what they need to do anymore, and, you know, they still have a razor sharp tongue, they're still manipulative, or, you know, maybe very stubborn, you need to have those boundaries set right away. And know about what might cause you stress and concern. If you know that if you don't get adequate sleep, you know, you're very angry or irritable the next day. So you want to make sure you know these things about yourself so that you can make those preparatory steps to make sure that you are giving your best to your care recipient. And then you can keep developing your budgets, and don't forget to focus on you. Keep up with things that you enjoy the most. This is crucial to all of our caregiving journeys, right? We have to be sure that we are investing in ourselves as well, and don't let the caregiving role overwhelm us. So some action steps: educate yourself as much as you can about your loved one's health and learn the basics of providing care. Because you might be able to hire somebody to come and do the care. You might not be able to. Maybe you can hire somebody, but your loved one isn't having that. So you have to learn how to do more. And that's okay, right? That's okay. Start planning your breaks now. Find resources and support for yourself, and get your care recipient comfortable with you taking the respite you need. That's very important, because if you're there 24/7 and you're, you know, you're giving into all their demands, you're taking care of all their needs, you're pouring your whole self into somebody, and then you hit a brick wall and you're like, I need a break. They might not be comfortable with that, because that's not what they're used to. That affects their routine, you know? And so starting that now, just letting them know this is the way things are going to be for my own well-being and for yours. Then they will learn to expect respite. They will learn to expect breaks. They will learn to expect others coming in to help. Relying on your community to help you with some of your tasks. Some of you have church groups that, you know, you have really good connections there, and they can come in and help. You might have friends in the caregiving community through support groups that, maybe can give you some tips, show you, the right direction on where you can get financial help or get respite. Know your care recipients' wishes and let them guide you as you continue developing your care plans. Again, your loved one is a human being with their own thoughts, their own ideas, their own desires. And so being in tune with what they're expecting, what they would like for the rest of their lives, if this is an end of life care situation, just that's leading with compassion and just really pouring into them the best that you have and knowing what they're expecting. Start documenting your care recipient's needs and your responsibilities as a caregiver. A good suggestion is putting together a medical journal or binder and have one on hand for emergencies. What if something happens to you? What if you end up sick and need to go to the doctor or you go to the hospital, or, you have an emergency surgery or something happens? If you have a care journal or a medical binder, you can pass that over to somebody who's going to help, right? Or if you're saying, if you're rotating care with siblings or other loved ones, having all that information in one space is going to help them help you. And creating habits for communicating among family through regular family meetings. I've been doing this job not for very long, but I've heard several times already about people who the whole thing just rests on their shoulders, right? They're not getting any help from anybody else in the family. And so having regular family meetings from the very beginning is going to establish that expectation. Manage money, planning for future care, because some of you guys, your journey is just going to continue to get more difficult and more expensive, more time consuming. And so knowing that that's on the horizon and planning as early as you can is going to help with stress and everything else. Create your care plan and a backup plan and a backup plan. I'm sure some of you experienced those times where, okay, I have a plan B, but what you really needed was a plan C, a plan D, and a plan E. Because life happens, right? Nothing is 100%, nothing is 100% predictable. And so it's good to have safety nets in place. So that way, when things do get a little hard or things do get a little difficult or unexpected things pop up, you're better prepared to handle those. Getting rid of your expectations and embracing your reality. That one I think is probably more beneficial to you than to anybody else, because if you just kind of let go and let life be what it's going to be and you accept where you are and what it is, it's going to do wonders for your resilience and your mental health. And create a happy place of privacy and rest to continue maintaining your own health. Okay. Even if it's just a sacred space, a corner in your bedroom, even if it's just, the floor in your closet, something that's just yours that doesn't have to do with caregiving, that's going to be wonderful for your mental health. All right. So stage 3, the entrenched caregiver. It's during the entrenched caregiver stage that things start to get real. You're now helping your loved one on a daily, if not constant basis. You might have moved them into your home or you have moved into theirs. The entrenched caregiver is someone who structures their day around the needs of their care recipient. My intuition is telling me this is probably where most of you are already. And so you kind of already know what's coming or what has happened through these other stages. You're like, yeah, got it. And this is probably the one where you're stuck in right now. And so at this stage, you'll have all the feels, right? You're really proud of what you're doing, but you're also overwhelmed with the enormity of your role. Maybe you're mourning for yourself and your loved one and the lives that are being changed. Anger and frustration might be constantly your companion, right? You might not even recognize yourself anymore, but exhaustion kind of unites all of us, right? That's why it's important to have these support systems so that when you are exhausted and you're angry and you're frustrated, you have those supports to lean on, because this is hard and it's probably just going to keep getting more difficult. So some priorities in stage 3. At this point, it's important to remember that this is probably the most difficult stage for you and your loved one. What you've learned and prepared for in previous 2 routines will now be your lifeline, right? You've prepared for it. And as always, your health and well-being is just as important as that of your loved one, and make sure you create a routine for your own care. The routine is going to become your best friend. So even the most spontaneous caregiver will sing the praises of routine. Familiar schedules for you and your care recipient is what will keep the overwhelm at bay and provide you both with some measure of comfort. Again, if we know what's coming, if we know what to expect, it's a lot easier to accept what's happening. It's when we're blindsided that we stress out, right? That the floor feels like it's being ripped out from underneath us. So the most valuable thing we can do is prepare ourselves. So here's some action steps. Be honest with yourself about your limits and how far you're willing to go in your role. There's no right answer. It's all about what works best for you and your loved one. It's okay to have limits, by the way, if you guys didn't know that. It's okay to say, you know, this is where this stops. I have to maintain my own health. So don't feel guilty if you have to say no. It's totally okay. Know your care recipient's limits and your own so you can better organize your days. You know, if you know that the person you're caring for, you know, once 3 o'clock in the afternoon hits, they're done. They're not doing nothing. They're not going out of the house. They're not communicating with you anymore. Make sure you understand that. And so you plan things to where it's going to be easier for both of you. Take regular breaks so you can stay at your best. This is all about resilience, building that resilience. Don't sacrifice your own health and well-being, no matter how tempting. So I think sometimes we get confused when we say, I want to do the best that I can. Giving your all isn't always giving your best. Okay. Giving your all is not always giving your best. Sometimes giving your some is giving your best. Okay. Because you don't want to burn yourself out. Keep up with your support systems. Remember, it's when we don't want support that we find we need it the most. Can I get an amen, right? Continue to educate yourself about your loved one's health and treatment. Don't be afraid to increase help as your care recipient declines, and be open about who provides help. Okay, so some of you may be caring for people who, you know, maybe have degenerative diseases, maybe they have Parkinson's, maybe they have something that's going to physically break them down over time. And so their need for you to physically move them from place to place is going to change. And that's kind of where, you know, our bodies start to break down too, right? So it's always good to kind of know what supports you have, right? Again, if you're doing those regular family meetings, maybe you have somebody who's stronger that can take over in that way, you know, it's always good to just have those, know what's available to you. Manage your budgets as you manage the care. That could be easier said than done, especially in this economic climate. Sometimes you're making choices that you'd rather not make, choices between, you know, paying your bills and buying groceries. But as much as you can, manage your budget as much as you can. Continue writing in your journals, documenting changes and solutions. So there is no such thing as a perfect caregiver. Be forgiving of yourself and know you're going to make mistakes and have bad days. Because, you know, hey, you're a human being, right? Even if you weren't a caregiver, you would still have that. We still make mistakes and we still have bad days, and that's okay. Setting your boundaries and holding them dear. If there was one thing that I could press upon you as caregivers, is setting boundaries and maintaining those boundaries. It's going to be better for everybody involved. Don't distance those you love and those that are close to you. Sometimes when we're, you know, kind of in the muck, and we're stressed, our social connections are one of the first things to go. So don't distance yourself from those people that love you and want to support you, because you're going to need them. Be aware of the times when hoping leads to inaction, and stay ready to be an advocate. I had to contemplate this one about, you know, what would that actually mean? And I think sometimes hope can prevent us from being realistic about where things are heading. It might be hard to think of maybe the sadder things to come. You know, we're human, and that's okay. But just be very conscientious, I guess, of where your realistic expectations are, okay? And continue to ask questions. So the next stage is the pragmatic caregiver. So this is the stage where you're an old pro at this caregiving game. You've been there, you've done that, and you bought the t-shirt or got the coffee mug, whatever you prefer. Your expectations of yourself, your care recipient, and those around you have become realistic, and you now understand that your best is enough. You're able to find humor in dark situations, recognizing the necessity of laughter for survival. Again, this is where your own practice of self-care and cultivating and maintaining positive relationships is going to serve you well. Okay, you're going to have those shoulders to lean on. And just building that resilience over time is going to give you a stronger foundation to stand on. So where you can find humor in dark situations, right? You can be realistic and you can be at your best because you've set those boundaries. And in this stage, maybe you're able to finally welcome the joys of your relationship with your loved one and others. You're forgiving of yourself, your family members, and your friends. And maybe they didn't step up the way they should have. Finding common ground with your loved one through shared activities and experiences, and hope for future possibilities, right? So this is, you've kind of crested at this point, right? The stage 3, the entrenched caregiver, might have been the height of your journey. And now things are kind of maybe getting more routine, more solidified. There's not as much, there aren't as many bumps in the road. So because you're now settled into your role as a caregiver, you found a good routine, and you're now able to begin to relax and focus on your personal growth. You're able to take the lessons you've learned from the previous 3 stages and apply them like a pro. This season of caregiving is all about confidence and character development. Okay, so you're prioritizing building your confidence and your character development. You kind of can look back on that mountain and see how far you've come. You know what works, what doesn't work, and you're prepared for any curveballs that maybe life is going to throw at you. So some action steps for stage 4: developing a relationship with your care recipient, allowing yourself forgiveness, and finding joy in who your loved one is now, right? Accepting them for who they are now and loving them. Work on forgiving. Realize that you have no room in your life for bitterness, right? Bitterness is very valid, I think. There's a lot of things that happen along this journey where maybe you've been disappointed or you've been let down, or, you feel abandoned and isolated. But now you can realize that, you can forgive some of that stuff and move on, because forgiveness really isn't about the person you're forgiving. It's about you. And you'll be able to feel a lot more freedom when you learn to let go and forgive. Build your relationships by enjoying activities with others. You are not just a caregiver, right? You are a whole person. You're not just an automated machine there to care for another individual. Start thinking about what the future holds for you, right? When your caregiving journey ends, what are you going to do? What are you going to fill that time with? Realizing that perfection is not success. If perfection even exists, it is not a sustainable thing, right? You might hit the peak of perfection and then inevitably you're just going to tumble down again. So perfection is never the goal. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. There we go. Reassess your care plans, resources, and emergency plans. Find out what's working, what's still working, what's not working anymore. How has my caregiver or care recipient's needs changed to maybe now the routines have to be shifted a little bit. Keep educating yourself and asking questions. And again, remember to focus on your own health and well-being. Okay, that's going to be at probably the end of every one of these. Take care of yourself. So stage 5 is the transitioning caregiver. Not everybody is going to see the end of their caregiving in this way. Like I said before, some of you may outlive your care recipients. Some of you, maybe your care recipient is, maybe going through cancer treatments, or, they got dialysis or something, and then they get healthy and then they don't need your help anymore. So this isn't going to be the same for everybody, but at some point you will transition out of your caregiving role. So it's at this stage that you see your caregiving journey coming to an end. And for some of you, the tragic part of this role is that there's typically only one way for you to move on, and that's with the passing of your loved one. It's important that you don't fear this stage or see it as a failure. This is a natural part of life and a completion of the circle. Okay, it might be difficult to think about that if that's the situation you're in, that maybe your loved one is going to pass. And it's okay for it to be difficult, right? Again, we're human beings, and losing someone we care about and we've invested a lot of time in is very tragic. And so it's okay to feel those feelings. We don't need to avoid them or be fearful of them. So your big task now is to stop, slow down, stop focusing on doing all the things, and transition into just being. Your care recipient is your priority. The battle to ward off death has ended, and you fought well and done enough. It's time for you to seek peace and tranquility for both of you. Begin implementing an end-of-life plan. And be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to slow down and begin to release. So this is kind of the point where you're focusing on allowing yourself the time to mourn and grieve. There's no one right way to mourn, and you find what helps you. Allow remembrances to remain, so we don't need to, if our loved one passes away, we don't have to sanitize them out of our lives. Don't bottle up your grief inside by removing all traces of them. Allow yourself to remember and reflect on your experiences, okay? So some action steps. Take breaks sparingly and with judgment, okay? So you definitely still need breaks, but as your care recipient is ending the end of their journey on this plane, maybe you don't want to be gone as much, right? Maybe you want to stay and soak in as much as you can. And recognize the value of being, okay? I think in our culture, we almost worship doing, but there's a lot of value in just being, okay? Don't wait to seek out end of life help for your care recipient, and don't shy away from speaking about death. Allow those conversations, especially if you're having those family meetings and you're including other loved ones in those conversations. You know, you guys can really support one another. And see the sacredness in providing end-of-life care and preparing your loved one for this final journey. Yes, it's difficult for everyone involved, but it is sacred. It is special. It's a very, it can be a very beautiful transition if you allow it to be. Letting others in, allowing family and friends to visit, have their last moments, and be at peace and have no regrets. Okay, you gave all you could give, and it was perfect. Okay, no regrets. Take every opportunity to be with your loved one. Hold their hand, have conversations. You never know if it might be your last opportunity. Allow yourself to feel. No feeling is off limits at this time. You can be angry. You can be relieved even in some ways. It's okay. You're just going to let those feelings come up. You're going to let them be what they are, because if you bottle them up, they're just going to wreak havoc on your body and on your heart. So we always let them out. Create a plan for replacement therapy. Your plan for replacing the time spent on caregiving tasks with other tasks. Okay, you know, I can assume it might be something similar to empty nest syndrome, where you've been this role for so long, it's become your identity, that it's kind of hard to think of yourself outside of that role, to come up with another identity. So this is a time where you can just kind of let those questions come up and kind of ponder, you know, what's next for me, okay? Feel pride as you reflect on your journey as a caregiver and start thinking about the future and what comes next. Be patient with yourself during the time of transition. The timeline is different for everyone, okay? So don't look at Sally down the street and how she just bounced it back and she's doing all these things now and she went back to school or whatever it is, and you're still feeling the feels. That's okay, okay? Nobody's the same. Everybody experiences grief differently. Start looking back over your journals if you've been keeping them. You'll be amazed at how far you've come. That can be very, very healing for you. And don't neglect your own health. It's just as important now as it ever was. Grief is difficult, transition is difficult, but that doesn't mean we just stop and sink in the muck, okay? If you have to sink in the muck for a while, that's fine. But also know that you still need to maintain your own health if you're gonna feel healed from this loss. And so the sixth stage, the final stage, is what they call the Godspeed caregiver. So the final stage as a caregiver comes as a surprise to many. After all, your official caregiving duties are completed. You've been the transitioning caregiver and your care recipient maybe has passed, and a few years maybe have even gone by. Maybe you find your thoughts turning towards other family caregivers. Maybe you're compelled to share and make a difference in their lives. Maybe just simply noticing a caregiver and offering an understanding word or a smile, having that support. Or maybe you can volunteer to help family caregivers in your community with small errands, meals, or short breaks. You know, letting that compassion and that empathy just flow out of you into other people's lives. That can be very cathartic, it can be very healing. But whatever you feel called to do, make sure you do it because you treasure your dreams, both old and new, your challenges, which led you to learn new skills. You treasure the opportunities to share lessons learned, and your memories of your loved one and of your time as a caregiver. The priorities of the Godspeed Caregiver is really just to focus on implementing the lessons you learned as a caregiver into other parts of your life. You're determined to not let your wisdom be wasted. So how much compassion did you cultivate over that time? How much patience grew in you while you were doing this, right? These are all qualities, character traits that you can now implement and bring forth and be proud of in your life as your caregiving journey has ended. You're a changed person, right? Probably for the better. Action steps. Now's the time we can make your dreams a reality. You can become a mentor or a leader for other family caregivers. Reflect and treasure your memories of your loved one. Implement the tools that you have honed as a caregiver in other parts of your life. And again, I'm a broken record here, but continue to keep your health and your own well-being a priority. So here's some final words from the author. Caregiver survival. How do you achieve the elusive caregiver survival? With the 6 caregiving stages as your roadmap, you will emerge transformed. Hopefully with this guide, you will gain purpose, hope, and confidence that will move with you through the next stage of caregiving and beyond. You'll be able to look back on your time as a caregiver with tremendous pride, free of guilt and regret. The knowledge and skills you gain can be used to enhance other parts of your life. When your journey does come to an end, you will see that you came out not merely a survivor, but a conqueror. So that's the end of my presentation. Did anybody have any insights or questions or anything they wanted to share, anything that they wanted to get off their heart?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
What was the 6 stages? I missed that.
Let me see here. The 6th stage is the Godspeed stage, the Godspeed Caregiver. That's the one where you are maybe sharing what you've learned with others, maybe being a support system for other caregivers, maybe earlier on their journey.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Will you send out your PowerPoint to those that attended today?
We post all of our education on our website. So if
Okay.
anyone wants to go back and rewatch it or take notes, it should be up within the week. But the book, I can definitely share the book title if you'd like. If that's what this PowerPoint was based off of. It's called The Caregiving Years, Your Guide to Navigating the 6 Caregiving Stages. And I'll put that in the chat.
Hey, John, good morning. I didn't see you hop on.
Hello.
I'm not sure what that little last one was sent there. It just kind of popped up, that empty chat. All right. So does anybody else have anything they want to share? Any other questions? Did anything in those stages maybe surprise any of you? Or have you all kind of gotten to some of those stages and realized the truth of them?
You know, it's funny that the stages, they overlap and may skip a stage because you can't box in your caregiving journey. And my journey may be different or look different from John's or from Helen's, but I tell everybody in my caregiver support group, we're all on the same journey. Our chapters just look different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure, you know, some people might feel like they have one leg in one stage and another leg in the other stage, you know, and you're just kind of straddling all of that. But this hopefully will give you at least maybe a little validation of where you are or where you're headed. Yeah. So if anybody missed it at the very beginning, please type your email address in the chat so that I can take attendance and send you the post survey to give me some feedback so that I know what's working for you, what's not working for you, as I develop more education for you all. And again, if I say this usually at the end of all of my educations, If you just need a friendly ear, you need somebody to talk to. I'm not a therapist, but I am a crisis counselor. My job before this was answering crisis hotline calls, doing suicide prevention education. So there isn't one part of the spectrum of human emotion that I haven't discussed with somebody. So if you just need to talk, you are more than welcome to call me. You can email me and schedule a time. I'm here for that. We've got more education coming down the pipeline. I do one every week. So if you enjoyed this and you want to register for more, you can go on our website, alabamarespite.org, go under attend caregiver events, and there's a list for all that's available this month. My next caregiving education is going to be, I believe, let me double check before I give you the wrong information. Okay, it's going to be distressed and dutiful caregiving for difficult aging parents. And then one after that is going to be suicide prevention for caregivers. So if those seem like anything that you would benefit from, please register. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. My email address is jstang@ucphuntsville.org. I'll type that in the chat. My job is to be a support for you, help you with resources, help you process whatever. There's no reason for you not to call if you need help. Okay, I'm not gonna tell you that's silly and hang up on you. So
Thank you,
anybody...
Jenny. It was good information. Hey, Joan, I just saw you. I just saw your face. How are you doing? Good, good, good. And Jenny, that quote that you referenced at the beginning is Rosalind Carter.
Thank you. Yes.
Made that quote. Mhm.
I can remember the first name, but I can't remember the last name. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else to be said or shared, I wish you all a very restful weekend. Don't forget to practice your boundaries, practice your self-care, practice your self-compassion. If you do nothing else for your care recipient, loving yourself is probably one of the best things you can do for them and for yourself. So don't forget that, okay?
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome. You all have a great one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.